We are live with today's pre-show of our SY0-701 Security Plus study group. I don't have my headphones in. So this is the reason we go, this is the reason we go live early, because I'm always forgetting something. Hello, everyone. Hello, chat room. Good to see you here. We were chatting earlier before going live with the video, saying hello to folks, saying hey to Malk in the chat room. Good to see you. I really did see your pin on our digital pin cushion, which I guess I could set up with, yep, graphics are working. We'll give you that graphic. We'll give you that lower third, and you can join us and put your digital pin in our virtual pin cushion. I'm not sure exactly how to say that, but here we are. We're doing pretty well. Hope everybody's doing well today. We have a traditional middle of the week Security Plus study group. I've been doing so many study groups on the weekend and at different times, and I'm glad that it worked out to be sort of a normal Wednesday, if anything can really be normal, really. That's sort of where we are. Well, we're just a little bit ahead of getting started. We get started at the top of the hour. This is our pre-show. So this is where I check all of my cameras. They look good. I look at the streaming. The streaming looks good. You can see a little dip there as I came live. That was the graphic that went up. And then we've got 3 to 4% is the usual cache number that we have there. There's a little bit of data that you're not getting until it gets to you. That data locally is my cache. So that's why you see this about 7 seconds or so, 7 or 8, 10 seconds after I say it. So relatively quick, generally speaking. Nothing is instantaneous, of course, unless you're sitting right here. And even then, I guess there is a little bit of delay as the photons move across the room so that you're able to see what's going on. But you know what I'm saying. There's a little bit of delay on the YouTube side. We could take that down to the infinite. Well, if you deal with quantum entanglements, then, well, we're not going to get into any of that. We're just happy to be here. I'm just happy that it's working. That my primary goal on a study group day is I open my eyes in the morning when I wake up and I think, is it going to work today? It's all detailed in that rush of, oh, it's the day. We have to get things going. But so far, everything. I have a big checklist, by the way. It must have 30 things on it. You know, do this first, do this second, make sure you've done this, make sure this is here. And I still forget things, even with the checklist. But we're doing pretty good right now. We are recording. Can't really see it. Let me get rid of the lower third. You can see my Cylon down here going back and forth. That's my video recording. I actually have 2 of them. You can't see the other one. There's 2 stacked on top of each other. You can sort of see a little bit of light just above the one that's circling there. That little bit of light above is the other system. So I have 2 recorders here, both with dual SSDs inside of them. So there's plenty to record to when we're here. Laptop is up and running. It is connected via Thunderbolt to my video system. Actually, it's converting from Thunderbolt to HDMI, and HDMI is going directly to a converter, which converts it to SDI, which takes it over to the video switcher. See how easy that is? See how simple that is when you do it that way? Everything in this room is SDI, which I think is serial digital interface, which has just the most generic name for an interface you could find, but it is a standard audio and visual transport interface, primarily over coax for copper, but you can also send it over fiber, of course. The live keeps lagging. Any idea where we can join for better video? YouTube is the place, my friend. YouTube is the only, it all goes through YouTube. So if you have a bad connection to YouTube, you will have a bad connection to this live stream. Everybody else is seeing, and the way this works is it sends a single stream. That's what my streaming box to this left side is doing. It's sending a single stream to YouTube. If there were any delays, I would see it in this caching number, which is solid at 3%. So all of my data is at least getting to YouTube in a timely manner. There are no delays. There's no lags. Everything is working. But what happens on YouTube is up to them. Now they have to take the video, they reprocess the video a little bit. They change it to a different size that fits what you're looking at. So you might want to try, maybe the problem is bandwidth on your side or bandwidth between you and YouTube. You could try clicking the cog wheel and bringing it down to a lower resolution. That might help if you're on a either a temporarily dodgy or consistently in a very inefficient network connection. So maybe that's what's happening there. Otherwise, just try another network link. We only broadcast our live streams on YouTube for the time being. It's just easy and simple and and it's been consistently good. So we've had very good success with YouTube through the years of doing this, that it's just been solid. And it's free for everybody. It's free for me to use effectively. It's free for you to watch. There's no authentication you have to do. You don't have to log in, or I guess you don't have to log into YouTube. I guess you do if you want to leave a comment. If you want to be in the chat, you do have to log in. But just to watch, you can just watch it. That's just how it works. That's the goal anyways. I tried to come up with a model that would be as available and a model that would not get in the way of you seeing this. Of course, this will be on the replay afterwards, so you can watch it on YouTube afterwards on the replay. If you're having a problem on the live stream, maybe it just makes more sense to do the replay, because on a replay, there's a little bit more of a buffering, and it helps a lot when you're in a bandwidth or a congested type of situation. So those things can certainly help you if you're in that scenario. I've got a lot of questions for you today. Of course, all new questions in this first hour. In the second hour, I will be taking your questions. So if you have a question that you would like to have answered by me, you can submit that at any time using the link on your screen, the one that's right here behind me, professormesser.com/QA. That will not only take you to the live stream, there's a little tab at the top of the screen that you can select from. I think I can get to the live page. I've also got the professormesser.com/live. I have embedded, there's the video part, which is not started. There's the chat. You're looking over my shoulder at this point. And down just underneath is the actual Q&A front end. And you can put in a first name, last name, or whatever you would like to put it in there. And then you can submit questions right there. It's a little tab at the top of the screen where you can do all of that. I think I have the Q&A open and available. Let's find out if I do, shall we? I'm going to go into the Q&A part of what I'm doing here. Yes, I sure do. In fact, there's already a question waiting for me. I'm not even going to look at it. We're not even going to do that. Hopefully you didn't see some of the questions pop up when I did. Did you see it? Oh, there it went. Oh, it was right there. Notice we also do not send this out in 4K. It's not stored in 4K on YouTube. That's because 4K is effectively 4 times the amount of pixels as an HD or 1080p configuration. With double the pixels, it takes Google more than twice the amount of time, but let's say it takes twice the amount of time to process. It really takes 4 times the amount of time to process the same amount of video. So a 10-second delay with 1080p turns into a 20 to 30-second delay if I'm sending out 4K. So that's why we don't do 4K on the live streams, because I'll ask a question and then I have to tap dance. I have to somehow tell a joke or do something while I'm waiting that 20 to 30 seconds for you to even hear it. And then I have to wait for the answers to come in. So it's not very interactive, but it is a lot of fun to do it that way. And it looks good in 4K, but alas, we can't do it just because of the time issue. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. I think it looks okay in the 1080p config. Sometimes I'm saving everything in 4K locally, and sometimes I will have to upload it for whatever reason. That's kind of rare for it to do something like that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. We're about 15, 20 seconds away from the top of the hour. That's when we get things started. So I guess I should sort of collect myself here and figure out what in the world I'm doing. That would be good, wouldn't it? Let's wait till it goes to 12. It's very satisfying to know that we are watching the numbers move over there. They are, which means I can stop this. I can go to Keynote. I can look for the green light on Keynote, which should be right there. It talks to my laptop. The laptop does a thing. It shows the slides on the page. Look how everything is working. I got to knock on something. This is wood, is it not? The problem with a live stream is there's so many variables and so many things that can go horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. In this case, I think we're in pretty good shape. So it's time to get started, everybody. Why don't we do a live stream and away we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the July 2026 Professor Messer SY0-701. This is the Security Plus study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And we get to see just how well you might know some of this Security Plus content. Of course, we have all new questions every month on our study group, except for the very first one. But that's besides the point. We'll talk a little bit about that, but almost everything you'll see today will be brand new. I make brand new questions for you every single study group. This also means that you can go back and watch the replays of the study group, and you're getting new content every single time. We must have almost 3 years of content of just the Security Plus study group in this version. So you got plenty of things to study there. If you are here live, we would love for you to join us and interactively answer the questions that we are asking today. The way that you would do that is to pop open a brand new window in your browser, or go to professormesser.com/live and scroll down the page. You'll be able to answer questions from there. There'll be a front end that is up and waiting for you. And the way that we know that that front end is working is we get to test it. And we're going to test it by using an actual question. This is a question. This is the only time you're going to see a question that was from last month. So this is a question that you have seen before, but it's the only time we do a replay. We refer to this as our rewind question because I want to see if you are able to get into the live system, answer the questions. And here is the #1 rule for our live stream. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. The question we have for you is this one. An administrator is reviewing logs to determine exactly how much data a specific user transferred during the last 24 hours. Which component of the AAA framework is responsible for this information? Is it authentication, identification, accounting, attestation, or accounting? I know we did this last month, and I kept it there because the error that I made last month, I felt it was important for us to keep the error. I don't know why I thought that anyway, but that is the question that we are working through and trying to figure out. I wonder if I take it off, if I can edit, if I stop it, can I edit and change the responses? I bet I can't. I bet I can't change. Well, I bet I could. Let's see if we can go into edit, and we're going to change the last one, or one of these. We're going to get rid of the duplication because there was just too much. And we're going to present this one. Let's see what happens, everybody. No, that didn't change a darn thing. I'm so glad I went through that process with you in the live stream using the time that we had there. In fact, it told me, oh, we're unable to save. Can't save it. So just answer one of these. It's got to be one of these, right? I wonder if I can change the answer. I wonder if I could find, nope, we do have one of these. We're just going to keep it the way it is. Why not? That's what we're doing, everybody. We're leaving it the way it is. And we're going to come back to this question in just a moment and see how you did with these details. Of course, you can see now what we think the answer is, and we're getting a much better distribution than we did last month, but we will go through this question one more time. We'll talk about this question and why 81% of you currently thinks the answer is accounting. It may be something else, and we will figure that out in just a moment. Well, thank you for joining us. We have a lot of information to go through today. There is, of course, plenty to go through on our live streams. But when we're not doing a live stream, we're, of course, on our links on social media. And you can find our entire video course at professormesser.com/YouTube. Of course, our weekly Security Plus pop quiz questions are available at professormesser.com/X/Instagram/Facebook/LinkedIn and other places. You can find us on any social media using the links at the top of our page, or you can simply type in professormesser.com and the name of the place you would like to go. So that's sort of where we sit with those different social media sites. It's a great way to keep up with what we're doing and to find out when a live event like this might be going on. Today, we're going to take questions that have been specifically written for the current version of the Security Plus exam. As we sit here in July of 2026, that version is the SY0-701. This is an exam that was released on November the 7th of 2023, and we estimate that the retirement date for this exam is somewhere around May of next year. So you have just under a year to complete all of your studies for this version. Of course, that's plenty of time to study, take the exam, pass it, and earn your Security Plus certification. So right as we sit here right now in June of 2026, you're studying exactly the right information and the right content. It's a single exam, unlike the A+ that you have to take 2 exams. Security Plus, thankfully, only requires you to pass a single exam. The exam itself is 90 minutes in length. You could get a maximum of 90 questions. There could be fewer than 90 questions. And the passing score you're looking for is on a scale from 100 to 900, and the number that is the passing number is 750. You want to see a 750 or better, and you will be Security Plus certified. The exam itself consists of different types of questions. The bulk of the exam, the majority of the exam, most of the questions you will get will be multiple choice questions. We're pretty familiar with what those are, but some of the questions you get at the very beginning of the exam are not multiple choice. CompTIA refers to these as performance-based questions, and I have a performance-based question for you today coming up next, so don't go anywhere. You're going to want to try out our performance-based question of the month. Not only is our entire course available for free on YouTube, every minute of every video, we don't hide anything behind a paywall. There's nothing that we're leaving out because you're watching on YouTube. No, everything is out there. Why wouldn't we put the entire course available for you to watch for free? But we do have other study materials that you might want to consider that are more of a premium study material, such as our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundle, and so much more. We have a summary of all of those on our website. You can find it at professormesser.com/701SB for our 701 Success Bundle. It's a great way to support what we're doing here, and we sure appreciate you having a look at that. Also, let you know that when we are done here, a replay of this live stream will be available on YouTube to watch immediately afterwards. It takes a couple of minutes, and then it's available for everybody to watch. I also create an audio-only podcast version of this. If you have a podcast listening program you would like to add it to, you can do that at professormesser.com/podcast. If you are on a streaming audio service already, like Spotify, for example, you can simply go to the search in Spotify and click on and search for the term Professor Messer. It will find all of my podcasts there, and you can simply listen on demand. About a day after we're done here, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will have timestamps on it that have an accurate breakdown of everything we did today, allowing you to find exactly what you're looking for with a single click. That doesn't come for free. It doesn't even work if you try to automate it. It really requires someone knowledgeable to watch the video and put these timestamps in, and that's why my marketing manager, Lori, is watching this on the replay. Hi, Lori. How are things going? Yeah, good to hear from you. There's a lot that she puts in there, so have a look about 24 hours after, and you will be able to find all of those timestamps there that you know are going to be 100% accurate because Lori put them in there. I don't even have to worry about that part of it. Sure helps quite a bit. Also, when we're not doing a live stream, we will be over in our chat, our Discord chat. There are thousands of people in our Discord chat that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. You can open and start your own study room on demand and invite other people to it. People can join automatically. You can lock it. You can manage the room yourself. And when you're done and everybody leaves the room just disappears. What could be easier than to get a bunch of people together to study than just opening a room and inviting people in and putting a title on the room that says, everyone come study for your A+, your Network Plus, or your Security Plus. It's right there on our Discord. We'd love you to join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your Security Plus exam, and although it is something that we encourage you to do, there is a cost associated with taking the exam. CompTIA requires you to pay for that. But there is a way that you can get a discount on your Security Plus voucher. What if you had exactly the same vouchers that were available at full price on the CompTIA website? What if they were discounted at the Professor Messer website? If you happen to be in the US, Canada, or a US territory, simply go to professormesser.com/vouchers. All of those vouchers are there at a discounted price. Have that available to you. Also let you know that we have our Exam Hacks ebook available as well for free. If you're someone who is working on towards getting their certification, you're working on earning or taking this exam, it will be nice if there would be a list of tips and tricks for studying and even strategies you can use during the exam to perhaps get you a few extra points. That's all available in my Exam Hacks ebook, and that is included for free when you purchase a voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Unfortunately, you can't buy the Exam Hacks ebook. You can't buy it separately. It's only available if the voucher purchase or with the Success Bundle purchase. And we certainly thank you for your support of those vouchers. It goes a long way to keeping this website up and running. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which seems to have a lot of different questions, a lot of different answers on it, some of them very similar to each other. The question asks, an administrator is reviewing logs to determine exactly how much data a specific user transferred during the last 24 hours. Which component of the AAA framework is responsible for this information? Is it authentication, identification, accounting, attestation, or accounting? I wonder which one it could be. I know this is one that I wanted to put in because I messed it up last month. I figured this would be my way to kind of shake it off. Let's find out if I did. 85% of you say the answer is accounting. How many people said, though, it was accounting? You know, actually, technically speaking, the last accounting was the right one. Well, I have to explain that to you. I do have to set which one is the right answer because when I click the show correct answer button, it shows one of these as correct. But because both of them are the same, we all answered the wrong accounting. As you can imagine, this question is poorly done. There's a quality issue here. And I assure you the person in charge of this will be strongly spoken to. I can say that because it's me. I'm the one that did it, and I will be strongly speaking to myself. We are talking about the AAA framework, which means that we're talking about the 3 A's. We're talking about authentication, we're talking about authorization, and we're talking about accounting. I think we figured that out by now. The authentication part of it means that we are providing some type of credentials that proves that we are who we say we are. This is your username and your password, maybe an additional authentication factor. That's pretty standard when you're logging in somewhere, right? We also have authorization. Once you log in, what do you have access to? That's a pretty good one to think about. And the accounting part, the one we were most interested in, how do you keep track of what this person did when they were provided access to these resources? So did they transfer a file? How big was the file? When did they log in? When did they log out? Were there any problems with the login process? Are there any concerns about how much data was sent and how much data was received? And what type of data was sent and received? That was exactly what we were looking for. Accounting does describe the question that we had here. And I would say that approximately 94% of you said the answer was accounting, probably because we had so many accountings on here. How could it not be? That is exactly what we're looking for. And that's why authentication and identification and attestation would not be the right ones. Obviously, I missed putting the authorization in here under one of these A's, but that's kind of where my headspace was at the time, I guess. Fortunately, there are all new questions in the study group this time, and we have questions that aren't quite as duplicated. So we should be pretty good. We're working through that. Let's talk about performance-based questions. For those of you that have been working on performance-based questions, that have been working through trying to determine where the exam will take you when you start the exam, performance-based questions is what you will get at the very beginning. So you start your exam, and instead of getting a multiple choice question, like the one we just did, where there is a question and then there are multiple options to choose from, what if the question was different than a multiple choice? What if it was a fill in the blank? What if it was a matching question? What if it was a drag and drop question? What if it was one where we had to put things in a particular order? Those are the types of questions you get right at the beginning. There's usually a handful of questions. So you might get 4 or 5 or somewhere around there, depending on the random number generator. And you will be expected to answer those questions right at the beginning of the exam. If you're not ready for this, it can be a little off-putting because you start getting into that first question and it's relatively involved. It's a drag and drop question with a scenario. And then you finish that one, go to the next question. It's another. Put in a certain order, drag and drop these things, add it to a matching question. Then you do a third one and you're wondering, is the entire exam like this? It is not. In fact, one of the strategies a lot of people will use will be to look at the question, see what's being asked, and simply skip the question and go to the next one until you get to the multiple choice questions. Some people like to finish the performance-based questions before they get to multiple choice. It really just depends on how you like to use your personal strategy with these exams. You have to take into account the content, you have to take into account the type of exams, and you have to take into account how much time you have left. There is a clock in the upper right of the screen that is constantly counting down, so you will know just how much is available there. So you've got a few options available to you and things you can do, but I have for you a performance-based question of the month. Just as we do every month, I have a brand new performance-based question. This performance-based question is one that has a couple of different steps to it. So let's step through this question and see what we think the answers are. This scenario in this performance-based question is a security administrator is reviewing authentication methods used across an organization. For each login, select the correct MFA factor type and determine whether the log shows true multi-factor authentication. So that means, is it really multi-factor or did it turn out to be single factor? We have to determine that and be able to put the answer in. And I have for you, instead of this being a fill-in-the-blank question, I've given you options. I made it a little bit easier for you when you work through this. The available multi-factor authentication factor types are something you know, something you have, something you are, or somewhere you are. Now we have for you 6 different logs, and in those logs, we have a primary credential and an additional requirement. And then I want you to tell me for the additional requirement, which MFA factor type is that, and is it really multi-factor authentication? So first, I want you to sort of look at this. Well, let's first go through all 6 of these, and then I'm going to give you kind of a high-level view of this question, where this is coming from. Our first log record 1, the primary credential is a password. The additional requirement is a one-time code from an authenticator app. So I want to know what that additional requirement multi-factor authentication factor type is, and is it true MFA? The second log record, the primary credential was a password. The additional requirement was a security question/answer. On the third one, we have a PIN, P-I-N, as the primary credential, and we have a fingerprint scan as the additional requirement. The fourth log shows a password as the primary credential and a login only allowed from the corporate office network as the additional requirement. We also have log record 5 that shows our primary credential is a smart card, and we have a facial recognition scan as the additional requirement. And lastly, our 6th authentication log shows a password as the primary credential and a hardware security key as the additional factor type. You think you know the answers? Use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Also let you know that you'll notice that the topics on this performance-based question are topics that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. You'll also notice that you could create these as perhaps even 6 different multiple choice questions. And that's the thing I'd like to get across to you as you're going through this. I think a lot of people worry about performance-based questions. There's that fear of the unknown. Because they have no specific structure, CompTIA could ask these questions in almost any way they would like. That effectively is the definition of a performance-based question. But what I wanted to reassure you with is that the content of the question will not be a surprise to you. These come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you know the objectives, as I like to say, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You already know the answers. So a lot of the feedback I get after people go through these performance-based questions, they come back to me after taking their exam and being successful with their exam, is they say, I worried so much about performance-based questions. I was so concerned about them. I didn't know what it would be like. Turns out they weren't as hard as what I was expecting. And I think that's probably common when we get to these exams. We always make it out to be much bigger than it happens to be. And I think the performance-based questions is a really good example of how we overthink and perhaps over-worry ourselves. We have too much anxiety over something where no anxiety really should exist. And performance-based questions is a really good example to that. So hopefully that gives you a perspective of how these questions are done, and if there's really some other kind of study you can do for this. There really isn't, because they can ask this all the time. So let's see how you do with this one. Go ahead and put in your answers. If you think you know the answer to all 6 of these, really we're looking for, you can put in the number 1, the MFA factor type, and yes or no, whether it's true MFA. That's where we want to go with these. Go through all 6 of them and figure out what you think they are. Now, make sure when you submit them, you remember what's there. I think we asked this in a previous study group. When you submit the answer into our Vevox front end at professormesser.com/QA, it used to not show you what you submitted. I don't know if it still is that way or not. I don't think I ever locked into my brain. I think somebody told me on the last live stream. I just did not have that locked into my brain or working through them. We'll have to see as we go through them. Okay, we got a lot going on. Now I've got other things popping up on my screen. There's so much happening here. Whenever we do a live stream, I always wonder all these different things that we are doing. Are we doing it the way you would expect? We'll have to see. Oh, in the chat room, we do have Charstar says, yep, it does show the answer I submitted. Thank you for that feedback. That's always been my biggest concern, because I have some very involved questions with very involved answers. Then you submit it and it all disappeared in previous versions. So I'm glad to see that has been changed, that has been updated. Let's go through this question, see how you did. We will start with the one at the very top. Of course, the question asks, a security administrator is reviewing authentication methods used across an organization. For each login, select the correct MFA factor type and determine whether the log shows true multi-factor authentication, yes or no. And I have for you, I listed out the MFA factor types so you can see this. You can see that they are something you know, something you have, something you are, and somewhere you are. So let's start with our first log that shows a primary credential as a password. That's one we're all probably pretty familiar with. The additional requirement is a one-time code from an authenticator app. So we have our phone where it has an app on it. It shows us a code that switches around every 30 seconds. And then we use that code during the login process, either appended to the end of our password or in a second field on the screen. Maybe it pops up a second screen and we put it in at a separate prompt. But in any case, we need that one-time code. So for that additional requirement, for that one-time code from an authenticator app, the additional requirement, the MFA factor type, is something you have. This is because the phone is something we have, and the app is on the phone, and the only way you would know that one-time code is if you had your phone. Now, this, of course, is a challenge, especially if you are someone who doesn't have your phone with you. Well, you may not be able to log in, or there may have to be a second set of processes because you're not using that. And since we know that is something you have, we need to also look at the primary credential of a password. What multi-factor authentication factor is that? Well, it's the very first one on our list, something you know. That is a password, of course. Passwords are traditionally something you know, and hopefully only you know. So we have something you know, and we have something you have. Those are two different factors, really making it multi-factor authentication. So we can say that, yes, that is true multi-factor authentication. See how easy that is? Let's do another one. Next on our list, our second log, the primary credential was also a password. We now know, of course, that is something you know. And then the second credential is a security question / answer. So it's asking you for some type of security question that you would know about if you were to go through this. So a security question is either something predefined or something from your history that it can ask you that is something also that you know. So obviously, if it's asking a question, what color car do you have? What is your mother's maiden name? You know, obviously, a lot of these things we don't ask anymore with a security question / answer. And in fact, we've sort of seen a decline in the use of security questions, primarily because they just don't make for a very secure authentication factor. But both of those, a password is something you know. A security question and answer is something you know. Well, that's not multi-factor at all. It's single factor. We're only looking at something we know. We're not looking at something we have, something we are, or somewhere we are, or one of the many other multi-factor authentication types that you might find out there. Those are the 4 you have to know for the Security Plus exam, however. So those are the 4 we are really focusing on with this question. So a security question along with a password, not true multi-factor. You shouldn't be using that. You should be putting something else in there to make it truly a multi-factor authentication. Let's try log record 3, which uses a PIN, P-I-N, as our primary credential. And the additional requirement is a fingerprint scan. Fingerprint scans, you've probably seen these fingerprint readers. They're on laptops, maybe a USB-connected fingerprint reader. We used to do a lot of fingerprint readers on our phones. Now that's sort of been deprecated. Because it is a fingerprint scan, because it is something that we are working through, something physically, biologically related to us, it is something you are. There's no way to get around that. You have a fingerprint. Most of us have a fingerprint. Not everybody has a fingerprint scan, which of course leads me to what do you do when you don't have a fingerprint? You do have to think about that as a security professional. But because a PIN, a personal identification number, is something we know, and a fingerprint scan is something we are, there are 2 factors in place, which means this is true multi-factor authentication. Next on our list, log number 4 is a password as our primary credential. We know that is something we know. And then an additional requirement is you can log in only from the corporate office network. This might be a very secure bit of data that you're going through that you can only access when you are physically located inside the building. If you connect from the VPN, you can't access that data. You can't even log into the network. If you are outside the building, connecting through a 5G connection, to the building, you're not in there. Not how that works. So that is certainly one of those cases where you can only log in from inside. That is somewhere you are. You're inside the building. And when it is somewhere you are and the password is something you know, we have 2 different factors, which means it is truly multi-factor authentication. Log number 5, that is a smart card as your primary credential. The smart card obviously would be a card that you carry with you and you physically connect it, plug it into, or tap it onto a device to qualify that you now have that card and you've shown that card when you show up for authentication. The other requirement we have is a facial recognition scan. Again, that is something kind of biological. That's your face, and generally speaking, nobody else has a face like yours. I keep saying that to you. Nobody has a face like yours. That facial recognition scan would be something you are, very similar to the fingerprint scan being that biological authentication type. The facial recognition scan of something you are, and a smart card is something you have. Therefore, there are 2 authentication factors. That is indeed true multi-factor authentication. And our last log record, log number 6, used a password. And for that password, we used a hardware security key. Hardware security keys, you may have seen these, like a YubiKey or a very similar type of security key. It's a USB key, and in the USB key, generally speaking, is a certificate. It's a digitally signed certificate that is signed by an authority that proves that that key is one that you own. That means that nobody else can take a key and put their own certificate on it and pretend that somehow that key belongs to you. That digital signature is directly associated with you. And so it's useful to have that key with you. The password, we already know that is something you know. The hardware security key you're carrying with you. So it's something that you have. Very similar to carrying around your phone or carrying around some other type of very convenient method for authentication. You have to have that with you to be able to do that. So because you are something you know with a password and a hardware security key is something you have, that means that also is true multi-factor authentication. There you go. Those are the multi-factor authentication breakdowns for this month's performance-based question. A primary credential of a password being something you know, and a one-time code from an authenticator app is something you have. that is true multi-factor authentication. A password and a security question, that's the same thing. It's both something you know, so that would not be multi-factor authentication. That's single-factor authentication. A personal identification number and a fingerprint scan are both different. The fingerprint scan being something you are, that is multi-factor. A password and a login only allowed from the corporate network. That's something you know and somewhere you are. That is indeed true multi-factor authentication. We have a smart card and a facial recognition scan. The smart card being something you have. The facial recognition scan being something you are. That means that indeed we are using true multi-factor. And a hardware security key and something you have is true multi-factor, because password is something you know and a hardware security key is something you have. Those are the multi-factor authentication pieces. Hopefully that gives you some perspective of what we are doing. Maybe this is a place where you could go if you're ever trying to figure out on these multiple choice or performance-based questions, what type of multi-factor is it, and is it true multi-factor authentication, or is it just combining the same factor over and over and over again? That is exactly where we would fit. Hopefully, you got a little bit of insight from that. That's our performance-based question of the month. And if you have any question about multi-factor authentication, I would highly recommend you go look through. Maybe this would give you some perspective on the things you need to know or the things you can work a little bit harder on before taking your exam. Good job on the performance-based question of the month. Let's now jump back to a multiple choice question. This multiple choice question, a format that we're all relatively familiar with, is one that asks, a system administrator is configuring a AAA server to, why did I put this in here again? I don't think I have that second one in here. Let's do a different one, shall we? I think we have had enough AAA for the day, haven't we? I think we can go to a different question. One that perhaps is even a little more timely. This is one that came from my phone specifically. So here's a question I got, and I stuck it into a multiple choice question. This multiple choice question asks, a user notices that they have been receiving an unusual number of text messages from Internal Revenue Service claiming they owe back taxes. Already my blood pressure is getting a little bit higher, don't you think? Which type of attack is this user experiencing? Is this AAA, authentication? No. Is it farming? Is it whaling? Is it smishing? Is it impersonation? Is it watering hole? One of these would be the attack type. What? It's not a AAA question? This is one, if you know the answer, please use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this particular question. We'll see how we do. The question again asks, a user notices that they've been receiving an unusual number of text messages from Internal Revenue Service claiming they owe back taxes. Which type of attack is this user experiencing? Are they experiencing farming, whaling, smishing, impersonation, or watering hole? If you know the answer, lock them in. A lot of people already locked this one in. You see a lot of answers coming in very, very quickly with this one, but do we really know what the answer happens to be? Obviously, there are a number of different attack types in the official exam objectives. You not only have to understand what those attack types are, you need to have some understanding of how those attack types work so that you can answer questions like this. A lot of the exam is scenario-based questions. You will very rarely get a question that has some other type along with it. So have a look at those particular answers, lock in your answer. Now let's step through and see what you think the answer is. The question again asked, a user notices that they have been receiving an unusual number of text messages from Internal Revenue Service claiming they owe back taxes. Which type of attack is this user experiencing? Is it farming, whaling, smishing, impersonation, or watering hole? It's got to be one of these, right? Let's see how you answered for this one. We will close our poll. 77% of you say the answer is smishing. We do have 20% of you that said the answer is impersonation. We also have 2% said farming, 1% said whaling, and 1% said watering hole. Let's step through this question and see why the answer of smishing is the one that 77% of you chose. Of course, when we're talking about phishing and trying to get information from you, The attackers will use a number of different techniques to try to figure out how to get those very private details out of you somehow. This is one that you can see with phishing. We often consider phishing to be something that would appear in an email. There are other ways to entice you to give up some of your information. One of them is through a phone call or through voicemail. I've gotten some of those voicemails that say, "Oh, this is the sheriff's department. We're calling because you didn't make your appointment for jury duty, and we're going to come pick you up unless you pay for the fine." I've gotten those voicemails. I've saved those voicemails. Those are just very common ways. And of course, people will call them back at the number and talk to them on the phone, and they'll give them, "Oh, we'll pay it. We don't take money. We take Apple cards. We take Amazon gift cards." And for some reason, we go along with that. It's a very effective way to get money out of people. But the way that they entice you, the way they start that conversation is through vishing. We also have smishing. Smishing comes from the term SMS, the system message function that's in our phones. It's text messaging. Smishing is a text message that you receive that has a link in it. It's forwarded asking you for information. I got a smishing message today that all it was a text message with my name in it. And they just put my name and a question mark. "Professor Messer?" question mark. It was just from a phone number. It was just sent in because they're trying to entice you to respond so that they can then involve you in a whole conversation of different things. And lastly, we have different variations of this that might be they're sending you an invoice. Maybe they're telling you that you have to send them gift cards because of a certain reason. It leads you into another set of different requirements of them trying to get information, trying to get money, or to entice something out of you. That is very commonly done, and those are very active ways that the phishing is being done. And for me, I got one of these, multiples of these already today in the smishing side. Did not get a voice phishing. I noticed voice phishing not quite as extensive as it used to be, but still out there. I still get one from time to time. So if we look at this answer of smishing, well, that makes a lot of sense. People have been receiving an unusual number of text messages from Internal Revenue Service claiming they owe back taxes. What type of attack is this user experiencing? I would say really we have two particular answers we could choose from here. And in fact, that's what most of you chose. 77% said smishing, and then 20% said impersonation. At this point in the attack, we really haven't gotten to the point where we know that the person sending us the text message may or may not be the IRS. We're just not quite sure. That whole impersonation part of it hasn't really been pushed as part of this attack yet. And most of what we're seeing right now is just a text message. And this is what is in the text message. We haven't evaluated the text message. We haven't responded to the text message. We haven't done anything but read the text message. And that's why we categorize this one as a smishing attack. There's nothing else that's been done in here that proves or disproves the people that are texting us, although the Internal Revenue Service does not text you, which means the people that chose impersonation, I kind of give you credit for that one too. I think both of those are correct. Can I change this? Can I take these messages? Can I change them so that both of them are right? Wouldn't that be great if I could? It'd be really fun to do. Let's see. We're doing all of this in real time with this, by the way. We're just trying to figure it out. If I can do it, but it would require me to clear the responses. And I'm just not willing to do that. But I think the better answer for this one is smishing. I think it does describe what's happening here. So hopefully this can give you a perspective of the things that are important, the things that you want to look for, and the things that either designate what a particular attack type is or what it isn't. Now, we do have other answers that came through. 2% of you said farming. Farming is a way that you would get a response from many people simultaneously. The attacker is sending out this message to a lot of people and hoping to get a lot of responses, but that is not what we saw here, of course. That is not the answer that not part of what the question is describing, is a large number of people receiving this text message, not what we were looking for either. 1% of you said whaling. This particular question didn't say that we were in some type of high position within a company. It didn't say that we had a lot of money or a lot of information that somebody want. So this would not be a case of whaling. And watering hole is when the attacker doesn't come directly to you. They go to a third party and wait for you to also visit that third party, and that's where they attack you. And in this case, this is a direct attack. This is somebody texting you on the phone with a message. And in that particular case, watering hole would not apply. The best answer here, I think, is phishing. And as a good second answer, I think impersonation fits into this as well, although the primary attack here is clearly a smishing attack. So I'm going to go with the 77% of you, and then we'll add on the other 20 just to make ourselves feel better, I think. I think having an understanding of both of those is important, and you should know all of these because, of course, all of the answers on here are from the official exam objectives. Hopefully that's given you a perspective of what you need to know for this particular type of attack. As you've already seen in our questions today, there have been questions about AAA. There's also been questions about AAA, and I don't know if you caught the one about AAA, but that was also in here too. And we did one on phishing. Now, of course, in the exam itself, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of objectives on the exam, and you have to know all of them if you're planning to be knowledgeable with the things that are going to pop up. So we have to know a lot about the objectives. And one of the things I did was create this entire course where I cover every single objective. Now, because of that, you might want to go through every single video, but there are 121 videos. Although I'd love for you to go through all 121 of them, and many of you do, sometimes you might not have time to go through all 121. Maybe there are some topics you're really familiar with and you feel that you don't need to go through that particular one. So I think these are different options you might have and the things you might want to do. You could, of course, maybe take your own notes, but if you're not watching every video or you don't have time to take your own notes, that's not a good idea either. Fortunately, I've created a book that takes every single bit of information from every single video, the text, the graphics, the tables, and I put them into one single book. This is where it is right here. You can see that this is the PDF version of the book that you see on the screen, which starts with section 1.1 security controls. Here's all the text. Here is the table that I have. There's other charts and images that I've created. Look, it's AAA, everybody. No, that's CIA. AAA is on the other page. We'll find it. There it is, AAA. Thought it was here somewhere. And digital signatures, non-repudiation, zero trust, and so on and so on. So all of this is in my course notes. Not only do we have this in a digital form, we also have a physical form. So if you're someone who prefers a printed book to carry along with you, high quality paperback book, printed in color with this nice glossy front end, we don't mess around here. And of course, it's identical to the digital version. Also, if you decide to get the physical version, we print these on demand for you and we send them to you. This is available for you in these course notes. But if you get the physical version, you also get access to the digital version at no additional charge. So a nice little bonus to throw in. So while you're waiting on this to be delivered, you can, of course, download and get access to this right away. It's a pretty big book, 96 pages in length. We've got every single video documented in here. Folks in the chat room said, why didn't you put an acronym list in the back of the book? That's because it's already in the exam objectives, and the exam objectives are available to you for free. You should already have those. You don't have, or maybe you didn't even know they were in there. Go check out the exam objectives. They are available to you. So that's really where we're focusing. This 96-page book on all of the different topics you would ever expect to find on the Security Plus exam, and a great way to support the things that we do here. If you want to know more information on this, go to professormesser.com/701CN. It's a big book. There's a lot there to go through. So if you're someone who is really looking for a consolidated view of everything, that's where you'll find it. Let's do some more questions, shall we? Let's go to the next one. And here is one that references, a Florida organization is concerned about database corruption from sudden power failures when writing data. Which technology should they implement to maintain database integrity? Would that be offsite replication, journaling, tape rotation, AES-256 encryption, or snapshots? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. See what you think the answer might be. This is a good question. This is a question that if you're concerned about the data that you are collecting, and I am, you're always concerned about the data becoming corrupted. I'm constantly making backups. I'm constantly storing those backups in a different place. There's always a worry that the data will go bad, that it will go awry, especially because we do live here in Florida. For those of you not familiar with Messer Studios, we are Florida based. We're here in Central Florida. So storms are a normal part of life for us. During the summer, every afternoon, there's a thunderstorm with bad lightning. And that bad lightning can create bad problems. Now, fortunately, most of the data that I collect, my websites and the things that we do externally, are in a data center and they're safe and they're actually not in Florida. But there are cases where you might have something locally. I unplug everything when a storm is coming through because you simply cannot stop lightning. There's nothing that will stop a lightning strike other than physically disconnecting from everything. An air gap, for the most part, is the only thing that can stop a lightning strike from affecting your electronic devices. Although sometimes it's not necessarily true, but generally speaking, that is the best way to do it. So whenever a storm comes through, everything here gets unplugged. I've set up the studio here so that I can unplug the entire desk and I can isolate it from the rest of the world. So it becomes just an island with no copper connections into it whatsoever. Hopefully just adding another protection. But that's not the type of protection we're talking about here. We're talking about writing data and database integrity. So see if you know the answer to this one. Let's see how you did on this one. The question asks, a Florida organization is concerned about database corruption from sudden power failures when writing data. Which technology should they implement to maintain database integrity? Should they have offsite replication, journaling, tape rotation, AES-256 encryption, or snapshots? Let's see how you answered this one. I haven't looked at it, so let's see how we did. This one, well, we do have a 50% of you that did answer, so that is encouraging from that perspective. The 50% of you said offsite replication is what maintains that database integrity if we have database corruption from sudden power failures. We also have 28% of you that said journaling would be the answer that you would choose, and 17% said snapshots. Lastly, we have 5% that said AES-256 encryption and 1% that said tape rotation. So when we start looking at a sudden power failure and having the data corrupted because of that power failure, the best technology that would maintain database integrity up to the millisecond doesn't turn out to be offsite replication. It is instead journaling is what we were looking for. Journaling is the answer because journaling is specifically designed for this particular scenario. You have that process where you're writing information to a database. So we receive the data, we write the information to the database, and if we're in the middle of writing to the database and lose power, very commonly that database will be corrupted because we only wrote a portion of the information. Maybe only that certain record of the database is corrupted, or maybe the entire database is corrupted. That becomes a little bit more challenge when you're working through this. So how do we prevent that from happening? Well, what you effectively do is put someone in the middle so that you don't have a corrupted database. You don't have to recover from a backup. You don't have to rebuild the data in some way. So in the middle of the conversation, instead of writing directly to the database, we put something in the middle called a journal. The journal is a temporary space. So we write to the journal, and then the journal writes to the database. What we're able to do is if there is a problem, if the power goes out, we've saved the journal information already. So at least some of it is there. Now, if we didn't update the journal all the way, what if the power went out in the middle of the journaling? Well, that single record is one that we don't get put into the database, but the database is not corrupted. There's your benefit. So we write to the journal then writes to the database. Now, what if in the middle of the journal writing to the database, it's corrupted? That's okay. When the power comes back on, the first thing we do is go to the journal. Hey, is there anything that wasn't updated? Let's check that last journal entry. Oh, that last journal entry was not updated in the database. Let's update it. Now the database is fine. What could be easier than that? This is so perfect for a scenario where there can be an interruption right in the middle of that conversation. And so journaling really is the right answer in this scenario. Now, that doesn't mean that these other methods of redundancy are better or worse than another, but it's more about timing. So let's look at these different answers. 50% of you chose offsite replication. If you've ever worked with offsite replication, it is rarely, if ever, going to be close to real time. Most of the data that we're dealing with in these data centers is so massive that to have a real-time offsite replication to another site is very, very difficult because the bandwidths would just be so large to have something like that work properly. And because we're going to an offsite replication, there's still a delay as we are sending that information offsite. So we're writing to a database. Before we can send it offsite, the power goes out because we haven't updated the data yet. See where the problem is? It's more of a chicken and egg issue, isn't it? So we can't send it offsite to be replicated because it was already corrupted locally. And so we've got technical challenges with offsite replication. Generally, offsite replication occurs at a standard time frame. So every 15 minutes, we update that site. Every 5 minutes, every hour. That's a very common use of offsite replication because we just have limited bandwidth. For the places where you're trying to maintain database integrity, though, that still doesn't help you because your database gets corrupted before it ever has a chance to go offsite. I guess you could pull that offsite replication after the fact, but now you've got an older version of the database you're working with. Not a very good way to maintain the integrity of the database because you're effectively deleting data when you're pulling back the backup from offsite. We have 17% that said snapshots. Snapshots are a very good way to make a relatively fast backup of a virtual machine. Snapshots are very commonly associated with VMs. Nothing about this question said anything about a VM, although I think we can imply maybe. Let's just assume it is. Let's say it is a virtual machine that is running a database service. The snapshot takes time, and we cannot create a snapshot every single time we update a database. If you were to look at the database updates to just professormesser.com, those updates are occurring in very rapid succession. Those updates are occurring all the time to the database. People are changing their addresses. They're purchasing, they're logging in, they're creating authentication, I'm logging things. All of this is going into my database. And if I tried to take a snapshot every time the database changed, I'd have to take hundreds or even thousands of updates in 1 second. Very impractical, and snapshots quite simply don't work that fast. So a snapshot, although extremely useful for doing backups and especially for change control of a VM, snapshots only take a few seconds in many cases. So you say, take a snapshot of that VM. It works for a few seconds. Okay, we've got our current saved state of that VM. Now we can make our changes. And if something doesn't work, we can go back to the snapshot. It's more of a backup function, really not a database integrity function. So it would not be the best answer in this case. AES 256 encryption, who doesn't like a good bit of encryption, who doesn't like AES, that's a great way to protect your data and to make sure the data cannot be seen by other folks and to make sure that if our data gets in the hands of the attacker, they won't be able to do anything with it, but it doesn't protect any integrity of our database. Just adding encryption doesn't somehow make the database uncorruptible. It's going to corrupt itself, except the data will be encrypted rather than the data being in the clear. Doesn't change the state of the database. The database is still fried. So doesn't work in this scenario, certainly. And lastly, tape rotation. We're not doing anything with tapes in this scenario. Tape rotation would be the slowest process for managing backups of this information. Generally, backup tapes and backups in general are done maybe once an hour, maybe once a day. And because of that, you have a very old data, relatively speaking, sitting on that file, sitting in that tape. So rotating the tape is part of the process of maintaining good backup processes and procedures, but tape rotation itself is not going to help you maintain the integrity of that database on a record by record, update by update process. especially if you lose power right in the middle. In this particular case, the answer that makes the most sense, the one that is the right answer, is indeed journaling, and 28% of you got that one absolutely right. If you're watching this video for continuing education credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. And although you can't simply watch all of my study groups to earn all of the CEUs you would need, I still think you should do it anyway. But this will at least give you a certain number that you need. In the case of Security Plus, you can use 10 video replays or 10 live events to be able to go to that larger, I think it's 50 CEUs you would need to renew your certification. Now, if you're not collecting CEUs, you're using some other method to renew your certification, this obviously wouldn't apply. And if you don't have your Security Plus or another cert yet, also would not apply, but I'll send you the email anyway. You can, of course, submit it. If you would like to earn that email, you must follow these instructions. Go to the top or the bottom of the ProfessorMesser.com website. There's a link that says Contact Us. Really, it's Contact Me. Contact Us will open up a form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2026 Security Plus, or something close to that. And then in the body of the message, put on a line by itself, tape rotation, offsite replication. So quite a number of super secret code words this month. Tape rotation, offsite replication. Now you can put anything else you want into that message. I do read through every single one of these, but you can simply send that in and I know what to do with it. You don't have to put anything else in there if you don't want to. It usually takes me a week or so to turn these around, and you'll receive an email from me that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. And I also include in the attachment a digital signature of that email so that you can even try out the digital signature part of your favorite PGP or GPG compatible program. But that's not important if you don't want to verify the digital signature, but it does ensure that you received this email from me in exactly its form with nothing changed. Again, those instructions are go to the top or the bottom of the ProfessorMesser.com website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put July 2026. Did I get that right the first time? July 2026, Security Plus. And then the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, tape rotation, offsite replication. I think I got it right the second time too. So those are your super secret code words. Submit that to me. I'll be able to get those to you as quickly as possible. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, but let's do another question, shall we? We can fit in a couple more, can't we? Of course we can. This next question is one that asks, a new junior analyst is hired into the cybersecurity department and is only granted access to the specific logs required for their daily monitoring tasks. Which of the following best describes this security principle? Is that least privilege, separation of duties, implicit deny, non-repudiation, or mandatory access control? It's got to be one of these, right? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer. A lot of people locking in their answers quick. Don't jump on this one thinking it's one thing when it really is another. We don't want to do that again, but I think you might be onto something with this one. A lot of people jumping on that. A new junior analyst is hired into the cybersecurity department and is only granted access to the specific logs required for their daily monitoring tasks. Which of the following best describes this security principle? Is it least privilege, separation of duties, implicit deny, non-repudiation, or mandatory access control? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, to submit your answer. So folks in the chat room are asking about CEUs. Can these CEUs be applied to a different certification? Can these CEUs be applied to a degree you're getting with another place? Well, all of these CEUs are generally applied towards a CompTIA renewal, but other third parties may accept them as well. That's up to the third party. You'll need to ask that third party if they accept CEUs from CompTIA as part of some credentialing that they might be doing. So hopefully that gives you a place to go. And of course, you can go back to my replays and you can send in the CEU requests from those as well. But again, keep in mind, only 10 of those can be applied towards any renewal during a 3-year period. that is a good place to go. There's lots of ways to renew your cert. For those of you interested in the renewal process, there is a video in the link of this YouTube video description that is how to renew your A+ Network Plus or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. Because there are ways you can do it very, very quickly. There are also ways you could do it much slower, but I do talk about those in the video as well. So really, I tell you all the different ways to renew, and then you can decide which one you'd like to use. Do you want to do it the slow way? Do you want to do it the fast way? And then both of them ultimately get you to the same goal, but it's always nice to know that you're working towards something that makes sense for the way you work, the way that your lifestyle is. So let's see how you did with this question. The question again asks, a new junior analyst is hired into the cybersecurity department and is only granted access to the specific logs required for their daily monitoring tasks. Which of the following best describes this security principle? Is this least privilege, separation of duties, implicit deny, non-repudiation, or mandatory access control? What did you choose? I've not seen the answers. Let's close our poll. Big numbers. We got 87% that say least privilege, and statistically speaking, everything else single digits. 7% said mandatory access control. 5% said separation of duties. 1% said implicit deny, and 0% said non-repudiation. But is this one of those scenarios where we chose one thing, but really it's another thing? Well, thankfully, no. We got this one right. Least privilege is exactly what we were looking for. In fact, least privilege should apply to not just the new people that you're hiring. This should apply to everyone in your organization, including yourself. You should not be using an admin account. You should be using a regular account that limits your access to the things that you need to use. So you should not, as part of your normal job in IT, need access to the payroll database. That's not part of your job. So hopefully your normal login doesn't have access to that database. Now, why would we do that? Why is that even a thing? Well, that's because there are times when an attacker might gain access to your login or to your system, and at that point, they effectively have the same access as you. Now, if we're limiting your access, therefore, we're also limiting the attacker's access. And that's the idea behind this, is you don't run everybody as admin, because if any of those machines are in some way taken over by an attacker, or an attacker gains access to a user's credentials, they will also have admin access, and that's a really bad idea. You do not want to do that. So least privilege is the method, it's the format, it's the style of security that will prevent those types of things from occurring, because a user is only granted the access necessary to perform their job function. 87% of you chose least privilege, and you're absolutely correct. That is the answer that we were looking for. 7% of you said mandatory access control. MAC. We needed another abbreviation for MAC, didn't we? Mandatory access control is an access control type that describes how someone gets that access. So this person may be provided access through a group, and that mandatory access control gives them that access. But that doesn't specifically describe the security principle. It describes how the security principle is implemented, which is not part of the question. 5% of you said separation of duties. Well, this seems like there would be some separation there. We are separating the user away from things that they don't need access to, but that's not what separation of duties means. Separation of duties means there is more than one person who is working with these logs, but each person only has access to a portion of those logs. Maybe the logs have sensitive information inside of them, and you want to limit how much information an individual user will have to the data that is in those logs. Think if you're someone who is working through specific details of this. If you're someone who's going through and working through a database of sensitive information like credit card details, maybe someone who is working with the user side has access to some data, and working with the backend, it would be different data. That might be a separation of duties. We often see this in a security role where somebody leaves on vacation And now we have a scenario where we could have somebody else step in to those same duties to see if the separation still exists. That separation is pretty important, especially when you have sensitive data, a lot of people, and you want to minimize any one person getting their hands on all of the data at one time. Separation duties are something to consider, but not part of this particular question. 1% of you said implicit deny. Implicit deny was what we were looking for. Implicit deny most commonly refers to a set of rules that are being followed, most commonly in a firewall or some type of packet filter. It goes through a bunch of rules in that firewall. And at the bottom of the rule base, if that data didn't match any of the rules that were there, it is implicitly denied, even though there's not a rule explicitly listing to deny that traffic. That's how most modern firewalls, or at least all the good modern firewalls, are configured, in that you put rules into the firewall, and if it doesn't match a rule, it's denied. That also means if you install a brand new firewall with no rules in it, what happens to the data? It's an implicit deny. So if there's no rules, data comes into the firewall, data doesn't match any rule because there aren't any rules, and it's dropped. It is implicitly denied. And that's very common to see on most modern firewalls. It's interesting that I still see firewalls, brand new firewalls coming out that are not implicitly denied. You have to have an explicit designation denying it. Otherwise, everything goes through. That seems like more of a cable. That's a patch cable. That's not a firewall. So don't use firewalls that do not have an implicit deny. That's a very common and very important safety feature in those firewalls. And nobody, 0% of you chose non-repudiation. This is a method that allows us or gives us a way to confirm that the data that we are seeing really has not been changed, and it really came from a particular person. Non-repudiation, really more along the lines of public key, working with digital signatures, but non-repudiation, not part of the question that was here. The question was least privilege. The answer was least privilege to this question. 87% of you chose that one. 87% of you got that one absolutely correct. That is the answer that we were looking for. Hopefully that's given you a place to think about some of these other topics as well and how they apply into the same scenario. Well, I know we're way past the top of the hour, but maybe we can fit in one more question, don't you think? I think we can. This next question, though, we're going to do a little bit differently because I have a separate book I wrote of nothing but practice questions. And I named it My Security Plus Practice Exams. I know, we really sat around a long time thinking of a name, and we really went to it. The practice exams book, it's a thick book, 381 pages. There are 3 separate exams inside this. And the reason I wrote it was because I started looking at the practice questions that were available on the internet, both free questions and questions from commercial sources, and I was not very impressed. A lot of the questions I found for free were out of date. They no longer applied to the current Security Plus exam. I also found that the questions in many cases were just wrong. The question was asking one thing and the answer had nothing to do with the question that was being asked. I also found the questions were not preparing you very well for the actual exam. The actual exam has a particular cadence, a particular style of questioning that it uses. And a lot of the questions I found online didn't prepare you for that style. So I thought, what if we created a practice exams book that had questions that applied to the actual exam objectives? They were questions that were written in a way that reminded you, that had a similar style as the actual exam. And of course, the content was accurate. So let's go through one. This one is not in Vevox, but our same rules apply. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is the PDF for my practice exams book. What page am I on? Page 22, question A64. And the question asks, an organization is implementing a security model where all application requests must be validated at a policy enforcement point. Which of the following would best describe this model? Is it public key infrastructure, zero trust, direct discretionary access control, or federation? It's one of those 4. An organization is implementing a security model where all application requests must be validated at a policy enforcement point. Which of the following would best describe this model? Is it a public key infrastructure, zero trust, discretionary access control, or federation. Now, in my book, this is a PDF, so I can annotate this. If you have a stylus, you can write on the screen, you can write on the book, you can highlight things, and of course, all this can be saved because it is completely open in the way that we work through this. This is also a great way to kind of step through question by question in the book itself. I know we're on page 22. If you just want to know whether it's A, B, C, or D, you can go to a page that just has all of the answers listed as A, B, C, or D. We call that our quick answer page. But the page I like is the one called the detailed answer page. And you'll notice when you put the mouse over where it says the details, it's on page 102. We're on page 22. The last thing you want to do is scroll through a book trying to find the answers. Or if you're in the actual book, you'd have to go to that page in the book to find what you're looking for, which is much easier. It allows you to go back and forth very easily. Hopefully I did the same thing in this PDF because you can click on the details and it immediately takes you to page 102. So we're there. So that's the one that was there on page 102 listed here at the bottom. This has, of course, a copy of the question. There it is, organization implementing a security model. It's a public key infrastructure, zero trust, discretionary access control, or federation. And it tells you the answer is B, zero trust. And of course, I have an explanation on why the right answer is right. My problem with a lot of the practice questions I found online is that's where it ended. But I always got the question wrong. And it was an opportunity that I felt was lost. If you're getting a question wrong, you need some feedback that can help you understand why you got the question wrong and why the right answer would be the right answer. So in my book, every incorrect answer is fully documented as to why it is incorrect. So now we know why the right answer is right. And perhaps more importantly, we know why the wrong answers are wrong. This, of course, is great feedback if you got the question wrong. But I will tell you, if you got the question right, go ahead and read through the wrong answers because for the vast majority of questions, I would say almost 100% of the questions in this book, all of the incorrect answers are topics taken from the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you happen to see an answer that says discretionary access control, you might realize that's the wrong answer, but you may not really remember, what does that mean again? What is discretionary access control? So I document that in here as well. So it's almost like you're getting 4 different topics in every single question that you can learn from. So make sure you read through those as well. And if you read through this question and you don't even understand any of these crazy words, is this even written in English? We can scroll all the way to the bottom and I have a link to the video that describes this particular question. It's the one I took the question from. It is Objective 1.2, Zero Trust. And you can either go directly to the link if you're here in the digital version, or if you're in the physical version, the QR code is there. You can use your phone and watch the video that was used to create this question. When we're done with this, we can go up into my PDF reader. And there's a back button, just like your browser has. The back button in my PDF reader takes us back to where we were, and we can go to the next question that's in our book. That is our practice exams book. We tried to put everything we could possibly put into this to help you know these questions, understand the topics in the question, and lead you down the path of learning even more, even when you're doing a practice exam. Now, obviously, the practice exam doesn't replace your videos or your books or your labs or any other type of study, but it is a great test to see if you've really understood all of that information that is in here. This practice exam book available on my website. Go to professormester.com/securitype, and you'll be able to look through the practice exam. I have another demonstration on there. You can watch the video there and figure out if that's something that might help you as well. And of course, the practice exams are included with my overall success bundle, including downloadable videos, downloadable audio, my course notes, and everything else that we make for the Security Plus exam. Also let you know, I mentioned this earlier, the practice exams are useful. The course notes are useful. You can watch the videos, but all of this starts with the exam objectives. This is an official set of objectives that comes directly from CompTIA that lists everything you need to know in the exam. They list out every single bullet. This is also the document that has that list of acronyms in the back. Let's look at it. I've already gone to this link, professormester.com/objectives, and I have downloaded the list of objectives for Security Plus. There it is right there. It gives you an overview about the exam, breaks down the different exam objective domains, those 5 different large sections of the exam, domain 1, domain 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the rest of the document are the details from each individual document, each individual section of the document. So 1.1, 1.2, you've got breakdowns, section 2, section 3. We'll just go page by page. There's a lot, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bullets that are in here. Everything that you see listed, you need to know before you go take your exam. And that's why I say that this is a great checklist, because if you're trying to figure out, am I ready for the exam? Do I know everything I need to know? This document will tell you. Also, as people were asking earlier, why don't I have a list of the acronyms in my course notes? Well, because the acronyms are right here. Here is the CompTIA Security Plus SY0-701 acronym list, and every acronym you need to know, and then some, are in this list. Pages and pages and pages of acronyms. How much more acronyms can we have? Well, we can have more, but that's plenty in this list. And in the back, if you want to set up your own lab with hardware and software, there's a list of things you might want to consider there as well. So those are my that list of exam objectives. And by the way, obtaining these objectives is free, no cost, $0. This should be the first thing you reference before you start your studies. It should be the last thing you reference before scheduling your exam, just to see if you're ready to take this exam. This is a great document. It tells you everything. It's the default answer I have when people ask me, how do I know when I'm ready for the exam? You know that you're ready because you have already gone through these objectives and checked off every single one of them. That means that you indeed are ready for this exam. We do one of these Security Plus study groups every month. Of course, I've already scheduled the ones for August. We currently are scheduled for August the 19th for the next Security Plus study group. But of course, we have our A Plus study groups on the 4th and the 6th of August. We have our Network Plus study group on the 12th of August. But we do want you to come back on the 19th as well, where we will have all new questions for you for the Security Plus exam. If you want to know when the next live event is going to be, maybe you're watching this on a replay and it's well past August, you can always go to our events calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. That will tell you exactly when the next event will be, unless you're here today and there's no update to the calendar yet, because that happens this afternoon. When I go through there, we will definitely find that. The calendar is there. We also update the events calendar in our Discord at the same time. So if any of these dates change, if any of these times change, I always update this calendar, and I also update the calendar in our Discord. We've gone through more than an hour of information in this live study group, but we're not done yet. That's just the part where I'm asking you questions. What about you asking me questions? Well, that's why we have an after show. So if you would like to submit your questions, you can do that at any time using that same URL that we've been using this whole time, professormesser.com/QA. You can submit your questions into that list at any time, either in the first hour or anytime in the second hour. We will sift through that list. I'll be answering your questions coming up immediately after this. Don't go anywhere. We're not done yet. We call it our after show, but in reality, it's just sort of a continuation of what we're doing here. Don't forget about our Discord and, of course, our weekly network or weekly Security Plus practice questions on X, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, in your email inbox. And of course, our entire course is available on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. If you're in the US, Canada, or a US territory, you don't have to pay full price for your voucher. Get exactly the same voucher by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, our Security Plus course notes, our practice exams, and our success bundles are all available on our website, professormesser.com/701SB. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. Stay exactly where you are. In just a few seconds, we start our after show. Thank you so much for joining us and being here in this first hour. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. All right, I'm going to take a sip real quick and get rid of some of these pictures of me on the screen. And there we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to part 2. This is the part of the study group that we call our after show. As I mentioned, it's kind of an extension of the show. As you start going through it, this is where I answer your questions. So I spent the last hour going through a set of pre-created and somewhat questions of a dubious quality, but indeed We got through it okay. I think it was a good first hour. Now's the part of the study group where I want you to ask me the questions, which means I was not able to really prepare for this. The only preparation I have is a career of working in IT, in networking, in cybersecurity, in network design, network analysis, and troubleshooting. Hopefully that can give you some ideas of things that you might want to talk about. You can ask questions about IT, about technology, about something you saw in the news, about the weather. You can ask really about anything. I don't know if I'll answer anything, but I'll certainly look at the questions and decide if I will answer those questions coming through. So let's talk about some of the things that you are submitting, some of the things that you have in this list, and I will simply go through them and answer these questions as we go. Let's talk about what we have here. We've got a lot of questions that came through. We've been talking about CEUs and working through them and how that works. So one of the first questions that we have is about CEUs. It's about working through these CEU questions. First, let's be able to show you the information that we have there. And if you're someone who's working through these questions that we have, this next question is one that is sent from Daryl, who asks, not on that page, he didn't. Daryl asks, if I could put myself on here, there we go. Daryl asks, I have a question regarding renewal with CEUs on the CompTIA CertMetrics website. I've been submitting CEUs by attending webinars, and the past 3 submissions have been in pending state for the past 4 months. That's a long time for CEUs. The question asks, we're just wondering if I should just wait or something is wrong. Could you share a guide of how to submit the CEUs on the CertMetrics website? So I would say 4 months, there's probably something wrong. Somebody is not looking at what you have submitted to have into that list. So in this case, as many of you are aware, of course, we don't manage the CEU process. We don't manage anything about what goes on with CompTIA behind the scenes. We are an independent entity, although we are a CompTIA partner. Really what that is, it allows us to get some discounts on course materials and vouchers, which of course we're able to pass along to you. But we don't have any insight into the internals of CompTIA. We're not involved in the creation of tests. We're not involved in the maintenance or CEU process. Not part of what I have access to, and probably for the best. They've made a decision not to allow me into those systems, and I think that was the right decision. But one of the things that I can recommend, of course, because I get a lot of people talking about support, and of course I use CompTIA support at times as well. That support can be provided directly from CompTIA. So if you feel that this is not getting the visibility it needs, go submit a ticket to CompTIA. You can do that from help.comptia.org. Help.comptia.org. I guess it would be good. I could type that in, help.comptia.org, just so you can see the URL that is here. Welcome to CompTIA Help. Of course, you could search their knowledge base. I think there's probably another question in here that we have. We have other questions. What about here? We can find questions about these. Access your account. Here are some popular articles. Here's some recent activity. What I always do when I go to a page like this, I scroll to the bottom, because you know all the good stuff you want is at the bottom. We're here to help. Didn't find what you were looking for? Just submit a help request, and a team member will be in touch shortly. I don't know if this is describing a period of time or if it describes someone's personal mentality. I don't know, but you can submit a help request right there. You can also call them, talk to people on the phone. We still do that. That's still a thing. You can still communicate with somebody directly using voice, and they have phone numbers here that you can use. The easiest way to do it is to submit a help request, and you have to log into your account to do that, and you fill out a form that just, I'm asking about this. Here's the subject of the question. Here's the body of the question, and go. And they will be able to do that. So you've got a little bit that you can work through to be able to make that happen. But maybe this is one that if you're someone who is kind of working through trying to get an answer about something, they're very good at maintaining and watching those tickets. So I'm always getting an update on my tickets, sometimes the same day, sometimes a following day, but they're always checking in and getting information on them. And you can, of course, keep track of the ticket as well. That's what I would do. If you're having a problem with CEUs and they've been sitting around for 4 months and nobody's approved them. Why have they not approved them? What is the question? Do they need more? Is there clarification that they need? Did they just not click the right button? We don't know. But that's certainly not common, and you should contact CompTIA and find out, hey, what's going on? What's the deal with that? Probably an easy fix. Sounds like a very easy fix to be able to do that. If you'd like to submit a question, you can, of course, do that at any time using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab at the top. You can flip over from answering questions to asking questions. Another way to do it. So let's go back to the questions that you have submitted, and you can do all of this. Look through all of these. There were some questions that came in earlier about vouchers. So let me address that one real quick. People are asking about, when do I buy the voucher? Do I need to buy the voucher to study for the exam? Do I need to buy the voucher now? Do I buy the voucher before I take the exam? What is a voucher anyway? How does that work? You can, of course, go directly to the CompTIA website, schedule your exam, and pay full price. It's right there. You give them a credit card number, and they will schedule your exam. But you can also purchase a voucher. A voucher is effectively a ticket that gains you access to the exam room. And if you can find a voucher that is discounted, then you get more access. You get same access to the exam room, but you didn't have to pay as much as you pay directly on the CompTIA website. For example, if you go to professormesser.com/vouchers, we're going to do this right now since we're here. Let's go to Professor. I'm going to say that I'm going to do it. And then, of course, I hit the button that says hide everything on my screen. So I have to go to a different place to be able to see that. Let's go back to, boom, the vouchers page. Allow you to see it. Here's the vouchers page. I have a little video describing the vouchers page. Here's all the vouchers. Also, when you get the vouchers, you get the free Exam Hacks ebook and the instructions on how to do that. So let's choose Security Plus. Since we're here, Security Plus, the list price for a standard non-retake voucher is $439 if you paid directly on the CompTIA website. But if you paid on professormesser.com, it's $395. So you save $44 just by purchasing it there. That's it. That's the voucher. And you get exactly the same functionality. You're able now to register using that voucher. And I have a step-by-step registration process from the main Professor Messer website that takes you through. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. I've got graphics on it, the screenshots. You can see exactly what to do as you go through it. Now, all of the CompTIA vouchers also have another feature that you can add on during the purchase process. Can't add it on afterwards. You have to add it on during the purchase process, and that's something called retake assurance. Retake assurance is also discounted. You cannot get retake assurance for $99 on the CompTIA website. This is also heavily discounted, but it is, I wanted to get it under $100. It's an insurance policy. It's a retake. So if you take the exam and then you fail the first time, no problem. You have a retake waiting there for you. You can simply register for the exam again using the same voucher and take the same exam a second time without having to pay or purchase another voucher. So that extra $99 gives you a retake if you need it. Now, if you don't need it, then that's $99 you didn't need, but that's the idea of an insurance policy, isn't it? The reason we have insurance is to protect us, and we hope that we never have to use it. So same scenario here. The $99 will protect us, but we hope we never have to use it. But if we do, that saves us quite a bit of money, seeing how each voucher is $395 each in its discounted form. Again, keep in mind, you can't add that on later for $99. You have to purchase it originally. Otherwise, you'd have to sell the voucher you have and then buy a new one with the retake assurance. That would really be the only thing you could do in that scenario. So let's now, some of folks in the chat room are asking where these vouchers are good. All the vouchers here, if you scroll down to the terms and conditions, the vouchers can only be used by individuals physically located in the United States, Canada, or U.S. territory. This applies to both online and in-person exams. That happens to be the scenario we're at today. There's a whole costs and dollars and taxes and conversion rates, and there's a whole thing associated with that. But we're getting closer to perhaps providing this functionality, or at least giving you an option to purchase a voucher for your geography wherever you happen to be in the world. So we're working on that part. We're just not there at this very second, but we're getting there. I think we found some ways we can make that happen that would allow you to get a voucher at a discount, but still allow us to sell internationally without a huge financial issue with doing that. There's numbers of issues with doing that. So that gives you an idea behind that. Other folks were saying for this voucher, how long do you have to take the exam? The voucher is good for a year. So when you purchase it, it's really good for a year and a few days. But when you get the voucher, it's good for a year. You have to be able to finish your testing during that 1 year period. So if you start today, let's say the voucher is good until the end of July next year. Well, you have to be sure you take both the primary, the first sitting for that exam, and potentially any subsequent secondary retake sitting must be completed by the expiration date. And that is listed in the terms and conditions, has in here that the vouchers are good for 12 months from the date of purchase, and you must register and take your exam prior to the voucher expiration date. Oh, those all important little bits of information you need to know right at the bottom. They're not small print, that's regular print, but they are listed in that terms and conditions. A lot of the answers about vouchers are listed in those terms and conditions. And if it isn't, just hit contact us here at the top of the page, and I'll get back with you. We'll figure out the best way to get you the information that you need. Hopefully this gives you a perspective of vouchers and how they're used and what time frames are associated with them and all of those. But it could save you quite a bit of money if you get the voucher in the right place. Also, from the main page of my website, for those of you interested in the voucher instructions, if you scroll down into the other information part of the main page, there's a selection in here on the step-by-step exam registration process, and that takes you through a step-by-step. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. Step 4, do this. There's a lot of steps. Step 5, do this. Step 6, step 7, step 8. You scroll down and click yes. That's basically what you're doing the whole time. And notice that you only use the voucher when you finally get down to step 10, the final page. It finally asks to put in your voucher/promotion code. So that's where that comes from. Those are the different options. But of course, that gives you something you can use to step you through the process, because it can be confusing. What's the voucher do? And what do I do with it? And is it as good as just paying for the exam? And how does this work? Well, that's how we do it. And I'm just looking for a way to make it a little bit less painful financially as you're walking into that exam room. Hopefully that can help you as well as you're working through it. Let's go back to the questions that you have submitted. Enough about, I think we've done the voucher conversation now, but if you have more questions about vouchers, you can of course submit them at any time using the link on your screen. Here it is, professorbesser.com/QA. Just go to that link. That's the one you want to work through. Here, speaking of taking exams, good question from Henry, who asks, how many times can I move the date of my exam? This is a great strategy, by the way, to properly determining when you should be taking your exam. And some people even use this as a study tool. Let's go into details of what I mean by this. The rescheduling, CompTIA is actually quite flexible in rescheduling an exam. They give you a number of different options and at least allow you to do it over and over and over and over again. If you go to the CompTIA website, they even tell you, how do you reschedule an exam? This is from their help section. Who says these knowledge base articles aren't any good? And there are different rules depending on how you are taking the exam. So make sure you make a note of this. You must cancel or reschedule your exam at least 24 hours before your in-person appointment time. So that's an important consideration. Make sure you are, this is if you go to a center. The appointments must be rescheduled prior to the start time of an online exam appointment. They give you even more flexibility to change the time if you're going to an online sitting. Because, of course, you could take the exam in two different ways. You can go to a testing center, or you can do it online. If you're going to a testing center, you can reschedule You must reschedule at least 24 hours before. If you are online, you must reschedule just prior to the online start time. This gives you a lot of flexibility. But here's the problem. Here's the issue. If you don't reschedule, if you simply don't show up for your exam fee will be forfeited and you will need to pay to reschedule. Nothing can be more painful than this. And there's so many times I get emails from people that said, oh, I forgot my exam was today and I missed it. Now it shows I'm a no-show. Let me give you another part of this. If you have a voucher with retake assurance, the retake part only applies if you fail the first time. It does not apply if you are a no-show. So if you were a no-show on your first exam sitting, the entire voucher is forfeited. Everything. You thought the first conversation was painful. That's a really painful one to have this. So that's what I mean. They also remind you that before you schedule or reschedule, make sure the exam date falls within the voucher's valid date range. If the voucher is expired, it won't work. You can't redeem it. It won't be anything to do. Now, let me also, because of that, your exam fee being forfeited if you're not there, let me give you some tips and tricks that can save you a lot of money if you're going to do this. When you reschedule your exam, you go online, you go into your account, there's an option to reschedule. You can go through the reschedule process, click the button, you've now rescheduled your exam. But have you really? Because I get so many different reports sent to me saying, I went online, I rescheduled for next week, and I just went in to check on that a few days before, and it still shows the original date, and it shows that I missed it. And now they want me to buy another voucher. So when you went to reschedule the first time, it didn't take. Maybe you didn't hit the submit button. Maybe there was something that happened on their side, but for whatever reason, they still thought you were showing up for your original appointment and you did not show up. Therefore, it's forfeited. That's it. So if you do plan on changing your date, log out, immediately log back in, and check to see if it really has been changed. Screenshots can save you on this one. So make sure you take some screenshots, make sure you see the rescheduling. You should get an email that says it's been rescheduling. So this is, in fact, in the chat room, just as I'm saying this, Chucky says, make sure when scheduling, you get the email twice. He rescheduled twice. They rescheduled twice and it didn't go through. Had to buy another. Happened twice with Network Plus and Security Plus. This is why I'm saying what I'm saying. I wouldn't be saying this if it wasn't a thing, and it is a thing. So make sure that you have it that way. That is super important, that if you're rescheduling this, but this can't be a great strategy. I mentioned that earlier because some people, when they start studying, will buy a voucher and book their exam for 2 months from now because they think they're going to be ready in 2 months. And when the exam is actually on the calendar, it has a different weight. It has a different urgency associated with it. So you're really working. That's the date I have. I'm working up to that date. Now, of course, we all know in the back of our minds, we can always reschedule it up to a day before, sometimes even closer if we're doing it online. If we get to that point, we can always reschedule. But when it's on the calendar and there's a seat there waiting for you, it might drive you a little bit more. With some people, it might drive you a little bit more to get all of your studying and be ready on that date. Now, conversely, if you have made a decision 2 months ago before you even started studying and you said, I'll be done in 2 months. Then you got into it and you're thinking, oh, this is going to take more than 2 months of my life. This is going to take, this is going to take a, maybe now you go back and reschedule it immediately. So you have some flexibility with this, and maybe you keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, but make sure you manage it properly. Do not set it to a date and then forget it. That would be very, very bad. And make sure that when you set it to a date that you've got screenshots and that you've verified, you've logged out, you've logged back in. Follow those best practices and you'll be fine. And it can be a very motivating way to study. when you know the exam is coming up, you've already booked it, you've already bought the voucher. That's another part of it. You've put the money up to get this done, and the voucher is only good for a year. You better get it done. So that sense of urgency is real, and it's locked into the dates associated with that voucher, and it's locked into the money that you have spent to buy that. So effectively, you've now locked yourself into taking this exam. You better get it right when you take the exam, and you better make sure you don't miss the date, but you could always push it out if you have that time still left in the voucher date, the expiration day of the voucher. So those are the things to keep in mind. That might be one of those. So it just depends. Everybody has a different way that they deal with that level of scheduling and studying and anxiety. So being able to manage that with the exam dates might be motivating, but still flexible enough that it's not overwhelming. And you can turn it into a positive for you. You can turn it into a real study tool. It might be worthwhile. So you know you got to buy a voucher anyway. Why not buy the voucher, lock it in, and now you're tracking that date. It's on the calendar. Everybody's expecting it, but you still have the flexibility to change it. And to the question that came up earlier, had I put it up, Henry asked, how many times can you move it? You can just keep moving it. You can just as much as you want up until the last day that your voucher is good. So I guess you can't move it infinitely, but you could move it 365 times because it's good for a year, right? You can move it every day for a year. I don't recommend that, but you could. They'll just let you do it as long as they have a slot open. I don't think they've kept that policy in place for years now. So I don't see the policy changing anytime soon either, but always check the CompTIA website. It will certainly be able to tell you if anything's changed with the policies they use associated with the scheduling process. I think that's really how we work through those. Let's keep going through the questions that you have. We've got a lot here to work through. A lot of questions coming in. Thank you for sending those questions. If you do have a question, you can always submit it by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. What's that QA stand for? Anyway, what are we doing there? Let's keep going through the list. Oh, we got a lot here. Speaking of vouchers, this is a nice follow-up. Thank you again, Henry. Henry's thinking. He's a thinker. He's figuring out the way around this. Henry says, okay, I bought the voucher with the retake assurance. Do you get the retake money back if you don't have to use it? There is an accounting person somewhere laughing very hard over that. Nope. You do not get a refund. You do not get the retake money back. That's the whole point of purchasing the retake assurance, is that you are putting that money up at the beginning and there is no refunds or returns on that voucher at all, including a retake that you end up not using. So in this case, no, you do not get money back. And if you passed it the first time, there's a whole retake you didn't need. Well, that's too bad. You didn't need it. You paid for it and you didn't need it. But you paid for it. And because there was a second take that you could use, maybe the first time you took the exam was a little less stressful. And you actually scored better the first time because you had the retake. I'm doing a glass half full, certainly, on that one. But I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. There are no returns. There are no refunds. There are no exchanges with these vouchers. They're locked in. Once you get the voucher code, it's yours. You own it. The only thing I can really recommend in that scenario is if you have not used the voucher yet at all, you could potentially give it to someone else or sell it to someone else. Although technically, I think selling is outside the scope. It's not allowed in the terms and conditions, but I'm not sure how they would know if I sold the voucher to someone else. The third-party market's a weird place anyway, and you're the buyer beware in that scenario, because you never know getting a voucher code if the voucher code is really legitimate or not. That's the problem. Once the voucher code's out there, it's out there, and that's why they don't take refunds back on those. And if you pass the first time and you didn't get to use the retake, then you just didn't use the retake. That's just the way it worked. But no refunds available for that, sadly. That would be nice, wouldn't it? You could just buy the retake and then not use the retake, get the retake back. That's why you can't do that, because that doesn't work that way. That's the sort of defeats the whole idea of having the retake being there. Along the lines of taking the exam, DJ says, hey, is it better to take the exam at a testing center? What are the criteria for taking the exam at home? Because you do have two choices, of course. You go to a testing center where their computers are already set up. It's in a quiet room. It's you just walk in, you give them your ID, they lock away all your things. They give you usually a laminated sheet of paper and a whiteboard pen. You go sit down, they start the exam, and you're on your way. You didn't have to configure anything. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to set up any software. You didn't have to test your camera. You didn't have to do anything at all. You just showed up, took the exam, you passed or you failed, and you get your stuff and you leave. That's it. There's very little opportunity for problems at a testing center. Certainly the least problematic way to take an exam would be at a formal testing center. However, not all of us have access to a formal testing center. Not all of us live near a testing center. Not all of us might live near a good testing center. And there are good and bad testing centers. As badly as they try to maintain and police that, they don't do a great job sometimes. So some testing centers are better than others. We'll put it that way. That's a kind way to put it, I think. The testing centers themselves are a good way to do it. That's my preferred way to do it, because if you're taking your exam at home, the challenge CompTIA has is, how do we make your house as secure as an actual testing center? So because of that, there are a lot of rules that you have to go through if you're planning to take your exam at home. Those rules are not insurmountable. They are not challenging, but you do have to follow them. There's certain things that you cannot do when you're testing online. CompTIA has an article in their knowledge base, What is Online Testing? How do you get a certification online? They talk about the online testing process, and they have links here that will take you over to what the system requirements would be. For example, you can't use certain operating systems. For example, the minimum requirements are Windows 10, don't do that, or Mac OS 14 or higher. No Linux in that list. You have to have a working webcam, you have to have a microphone and a speaker, no headphones, no headsets, one screen only. This would not work for online testing. The proctor's head would explode. The whole system would break. Oh, I'm ready to take my exam. Is this good? It is not good. In fact, you have to show, if you have multiple screens on, sometimes people said we have to show it unplugged. Other people said I had to put a sheet over it. I had to put a towel over the screen to be able to work through that. But there is a big list of what is required, what is prohibited. You can't use virtual machines. You can't use beta operating systems. You can't use mobile phones, tablets, headphones, earbuds, styluses, or watches. You can't use smart or connected devices with recording or AI features. Duh. You can't use secondary or touchscreen displays. You cannot use VPNs, corporate networks, or public/shared networks. There's a much larger list of these on the CompTIA section of the Pearson VUE website, and there's links on CompTIA that will take you over there. So make sure you are familiar with that and all of those rules. They go through what the testing space has to be set up as, what your desk setup needs to be, what the room requirements are, what the prohibited spaces are. And they've actually had to say, you cannot take your exam in the bathroom. Now, I understand why. Now, if you've lived with someone before in an apartment, you understand this. Like, the only quiet place in this where we are is that bathroom. But apparently there were a lot of people taking their exam in the bathroom, and it just is not seemly. So they say don't do that. You also can't take it in a public space. You can't take it in a coffee shop or any environment in which you are not fully dressed. You cannot take the exam by the pool. See, we went a good way with that one. It's literally listed in the prohibited spaces. And this is sort of like that document that you get with your hair dryer. It says, do not use this hair dryer in the shower. And they have to put that in there because somebody used the hair dryer in the shower. Well, you cannot use any environment in which you are not fully dressed. Wouldn't you just love to see the screenshot from that one, though? That would just be phenomenal if you are somebody working online. So there's a lot of rules, and you must follow those rules to be able to take your exam at home. Not only rules of how it has to be set up, there's certain things you can and cannot do during the exam. You have to stay in shot of your camera. If you drop something on the floor and you go out of the scope of the camera and then you come back, it'll show that your exam has been revoked. It's over. Your exam. If somebody came in the room and walked behind you and just walked through, the exam is revoked. If there is an unusual noise, your exam is revoked. There's a lot of ways they will revoke your exam, because if something like that is going on, it's clearly not a secure environment, and it's not something you should be using to take the exam. So pretty important to be able to work that way. And of course, you should be in an environment in which you are fully dressed. Fully dressed. I don't think I emphasize that quite enough, but certainly important. Outside the scope of the exam, do what you want. But during the exam, fully dressed, please. Would be nice. There's more questions coming up. Why am I on the screen multiple times? Let's see, more questions coming up. Let's keep going. We do have some time, so let's keep going through a few of these. There's some folks were asking about how much a voucher usually costs, and it's different depending on the exam you're taking. So you'll need to go to professormesser.com/vouchers and look at the prices for you. It's different depending on. So make sure that you have a look at that. Here's an interesting one. This is somebody thinking. This is CJ who says, have you ever gotten a perfect score on any certification? I've not. I've taken a lot of certification exams, but when I usually take the certification exams, it's on my very first process of learning that content. I think there was one A+ exam. I got pretty close, but I'm not shooting for a perfect score on my exam anyway. If you're me and you do a lot of creation of study materials, if I take one of these exams, I can't talk about it. But also if I'm taking the exam, I'm thinking about a lot of things during the exam. That was an interesting way to phrase that question. I see that the graphic they have here doesn't really describe perfectly the thing that they were asking about, and the answers that they have here are set up different. I wonder what, so my mind is always going, oh, and I should probably answer the question. I should probably focus, but I'm always thinking about how are they posing these questions? What is important about this question? How does this question fit into the bigger picture of things? And so I never get a perfect score on these things. I'm always thinking about other stuff. I don't walk into it trying to get a perfect score either. I just want to get good enough to pass. But those I've come kind of close, but only interestingly enough, got that close. It wasn't like I was trying to get that close to any of them. The perfect score on a CompTIA exam is at the number required to pass. So for Security Plus, you have a scale between 100 and 900. The perfect score is a 750. So that's the perfect score. Ultimately, nobody cares what your score is if you pass. If you get 750 or more, that doesn't matter. You've passed. It's done. It's a pass-fail. So the perfect score is 750. I know 900 could be a perfect score. That's an okay score, but it's no more perfect than the 750. Both are just as perfect than the other. So that's my perspective on perfect scores anyway. There are things to worry about from a score perspective. Your credit history, how much you're paying for a house. There's certain numbers that are important. What is the interest rate? What type of returns am I getting on that investment? Those are important numbers, but the score of your exam being perfect, not as important as those. Really not very important at all. 750 is the important number. Keep your eye on that. You're going to do just fine. That's the perfect one to have. There were some folks during the live stream, and there was a question here from Fabian who says, it's expected to change the version of the exam soon. I read that changes every 3 years. Is that true? It is not. It's really 3.5 years. So when the 701 came out, in fact, I should find that. I presented that earlier in the study group. And of course, now I can't see it on my screen because it's just the way things work in my studio. But let's go all the way to the top of the presentation I showed earlier, because I had a nice summary of the exam information. There it is. Let's bring that up. Can I show it full screen? How am I going to do this? Probably not going to. Oh, I sure am. There is on the screen this information. Here's the nice summary of the 701. So the SY0-701 exam was released on November the 7th of 2023. Now, if it was a 3-year renewal, a 3-year expiration, a retirement, rather, that's the proper term to use for this. A retirement would be November 7th of 2026, but it's not. It's 3.5 years. So we expect the retirement to be somewhere in May of 2027. So for those of you studying for the 701, don't worry about new exams that might be coming out later in the year, because it's quite honestly irrelevant. We're studying for the 701 right now. We're not going to wait 6 months for a different exam to come out somewhere. That's not useful at all, because you'll be done with this certification in 3 months and already certified at that point, or you should be. There's no reason. You should never, never, never wait for a new version of a certification to get certified. It's pointless, because the only thing employers want to know is, are you certified? They don't ask, when did you get certified? Did you get certified last year? I don't know if that's good enough for me. They never say that. They just want to know, are you Security Plus certified? Yes, I am. Great. That's all I need to know. That's where you are. And so that's why I tell people, don't worry about exams retiring sometime in the distant future. That is nothing but a distraction for getting your certification and putting it in your pocket. A certification you earn that is in your pocket that you're able to show a prospective employer is much more valuable. It's infinitely more valuable than some future certification in another version that you take sometime in the future. Let me also tell you that, let's say you did. Let's say I'm not going to take this exam now. I'm waiting until May and I'm going to take the new exam. Well, you could certainly do that. But if you took the new exam and you passed it, guess what you become? Security Plus certified. Well, I could have taken the exam today and become Security Plus certified. That's my point. There is no value. There's no benefit for waiting for some future version of exam that has only been generally updated. It's not even all new information. It's just somewhat updated information. And it's still Security Plus. And employers don't care which version you take anyway. Once you become Security Plus certified, it also doesn't really matter what exam version is out. You're Security Plus certified. They could change the exam every day. They don't, thankfully, but they could. And it wouldn't matter to you because you're already Security Plus certified. That's it. So that's why you don't have to keep up with what versions are out or what exam objective versions are out there. Once you're certified, you're certified. You'll never have to take the exam again. You just renew it. The renewal process does not require you to take the exam. So although it does change and retires after 3.5 years, that's something you're going to have to worry about. Not really part of the issue that you will have associated with your exam. That's where you should go to check those things. Let's see if I can get back on the screen, and I can. But that's my recommendation to you, is don't worry about those dates. It is so distracting for people because they look at, oh, there's a new version coming, and if it's new, it must be better. It must be newer. There's got to be some value to it that the current exam doesn't have. Nope, same thing. It's the same exam with updated objectives. The certification you earn is identical. In fact, the certification doesn't have the exam version associated with it. It's not the SY0-701 Security Plus certification. It's not the SY0-801, whatever the next one's going to be, certification. It's the Security Plus certification. So it doesn't matter which exam you take, the piece of paper you get at the end of it is identical. There's no benefit to waiting. In fact, if anything, there's a detriment to waiting. You're doing yourself a disservice by waiting. Get the version now. By the way, there will also be a very limited number of study materials available when or if a new exam version comes out, which also puts you at a disadvantage. There's just no good reason to wait for an exam to work this. All right, let's talk about real stuff. Afonso, bring in the heat. Did you ever fail an exam, Professor Messer? Absolutely. I have failed exams in my career. Certification exams, generally speaking, are very difficult, especially when you're not in that particular area. You're learning some new content and you're taking some exams that you've never taken before. It's very challenging. Throughout my career, I used to have a folder here that I could pull out with all the certifications I ever got throughout my career. And there was probably 12 to 15 of them in there. I've gone through a number of different certification sittings. There's probably more than that because I don't think I counted my Palo Alto Network certifications. So maybe even closer to 20. So 20 different certifications that I've taken throughout my career. Some I had to take twice to earn that certification. I am trying to learn these topics and these ideas and these new things the same way that you're doing with the Security Plus. The exam that really hurt me the most, see, I think it was a cabling exam. Back in the day, prior to CompTIA, there were a number of different companies that made certifications that were very niche. There was one from an organization called CNX, Certified Network Expert. It was a consortium of different companies working together to create these certifications. Effectively sort of what CompTIA does now, just inside CompTIA proper. But so you could go to all these different networking companies and they all got together and said, let's make some networking certs so that the people that are using our technologies will be familiar with what they're working with. And there were CNX exams for Ethernet, for, well, I'll date myself with some of these, for token ring, for FIDI, for ATM. Oh, man. And for cabling. There was a CNX exam for cabling. And I got all these certifications through the years. Might not have gotten ATM now I'm thinking about it. Maybe I did. I don't remember. Let's say I didn't. So I got Ethernet, I got token ring, I got FIDI, I got cabling. But the cabling one, I'm not from a cabling background. I didn't do a lot of cabling at the time. And cabling itself was not quite as standardized as it is now. And you had to learn about these different standards, these different formats, cable types, which are different than cable categories they were at the time. Cable types now are not part of what we do. Now everything is categories of cable. How the cables are wired, how they're used, proper use of them, how do you pull the cable, how do you work with the cable. These were things I did not have a lot of knowledge on, and there were not a lot of study sources available for this. I went in, took the exam, failed it. Gone. Didn't do well. Didn't think I did well, and I really didn't. And I thought, I'm going back. I'm going to pass this the next time. I'm going to study. I went and studied, and I spent nights, and I learned about cabling. I got some more cables, and I read more materials, and I found some more books, and I poured through those. I went and took the exam again, and I failed it the second time. How frustrating. I was ready. I walked in. I'm going to crush this exam. What I meant to say was, this exam is going to crush me. So that's sort of how that works. But by that point, I was figuring it out. And I was learning a lot about cabling, interestingly enough, and took it the third time and finally passed it. So it's a challenge. It's a struggle. It's a war. This is what we all go through when we're dealing with certifications. So see if when you step into these exam rooms, I mean, you're really taking all of this knowledge you have and somehow trying to get it out onto that page, onto that screen. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. And in my case, with that particular exam, it did not. Now, fortunately, I didn't have a lot of those. I took these exams pretty seriously, and I tended to overstudy for certification exams. I really wanted to know details about how all of these things work because I don't like walking into an exam room and being unprepared. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the amount of pressure and the anxiety that comes with that. When you walk into an exam room prepared, it's a little bit easier to get through the exam process. So that's what I did too. I went through that and that process of failure and more studying and failure again and more studying. I wish they'd had a retake assurance option. I would have probably taken advantage of that, but they did not. So I paid for it twice. My employer paid once I passed, but when I failed, that one was on me. So that's another reason I overstudied, because I didn't want to pay for these certifications. I wanted my employer to pay for it, but the only way they would pay is if I passed the certification. Sometimes you're working, here's an even worse scenario. Here is the worst certification anxiety scenario that I ran into, was that I was working for a company that had certifications, and as a systems engineer for the company, I was required to take it. Imagine working for a Palo Alto Networks as a senior systems engineer and taking the Palo Alto Networks technical exam. You better pass that exam. You're not a junior engineer. You're not somebody they just hired off the street. You're one of the original systems engineers in the company that was hired when the company got started. You've been deploying these technologies to hundreds of customers. You have been describing the inner workings of these technologies for years. And now you have to take the certification exam. You better pass it the first time. That was the worst anxiety level of taking an exam. But that one turned out okay. Turns out I did know what I was talking about when it came to these firewalls, at least enough to pass the certification exam. So I took it. I think I even got a backpack. Where's my backpack? It's not in here. I have a Palo Alto Networks backpack somewhere with my certification stuff on it. That was the days when you passed the certification exam and the company would send you a backpack. They'd send you like real swag. These days you have to pay to get a certificate. Oh, sad. Maybe we got to bring that back. I want to go back to backpacks when you pass the certification exam. How can we do that? Let's see if we can figure out a way to make that happen. Can't we? I know we're past the top of the hour, but we got a couple of really important things to do here. First, Chauncey, exam is tomorrow. Best of luck. You asked for some hype. I'm your hype man. You're going to crush this. You've been studying. You know the exam objectives. It's tomorrow, so you can still go through the objectives one more time, get those last little pieces of information in the brain, walk in. You're going to crush it. You're going to do great. This is the idea. You just have to have a strategy. You just have to have a plan. You walk in there. You can't help but pass these when that happens. Definitely important. This is a common question, but kind of an important question from Felipe, who says, what is the best way to study for performance-based questions? As I mentioned earlier on in the study group, performance-based questions, the definition of a performance-based question is anything that is not multiple choice. That is the definition. So there are multiple choice questions. There's a question, choose A, B, C, or D. Multiple choice. And then there's everything else, every other possible way of asking a question. And CompTIA refers to those as performance-based questions. How do you study for that? This is where I think people get sort of wrapped around the axle. We're so accustomed to how the question is being asked that I think a lot of people want to see how questions can be asked with performance-based questions. But in reality, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. You could take a multiple choice question and turn it into a fill in the blank. You can turn it into a matching question. You can turn it into a drag and drop question. You can turn it into a command line question. You can do a lot just by changing around the way that a question is structured. The content of the question remained the same. The only difference was how the question was being posed to you. So my recommendation to the best way to study for a performance-based question, there's really only one place to go. Your official exam objectives. This is the best way because, as I mentioned earlier, if you know the answer to every question, and that's effectively what this is, this gives you every possible topic that you might be tested on. If you know every possible topic that you could be tested on, really doesn't matter how we ask the question. You're going to get it right every single time. And that's why I always tell you, go back to the exam objectives. Have you downloaded the exam objectives? Have you used the exam objectives as your checklist? This is going to be the way. And as I also mentioned earlier, people invariably come back to me after their exam is over. They were successful. They passed their exam, and they always say, I was really worried about the performance-based questions. They weren't so bad. I really overreacted over the performance-based questions. They were really quite simple. Well, of course they were simple because you studied. You knew the content. The only time a question is a trick question is when you don't know it. Then this question's really tricky on this nuclear fission. I should have studied more about nuclear fission. Yes, if you don't know anything about the topic, it's going to seem very tricky. But if you already know, if you're a nuclear scientist, it's an easy one. Yeah, it's answers B. So that's the difference. Study those exam objectives. They are really the best way to work with performance-based questions. And you could probably, in your own mind, think of different ways to take a multiple choice question and present it as a fill in the blank, present it as a matching question, present it as a pull-down menu question, present it as a drag and drop. In your mind, you can kind of see how you could do that. Well, then what's the difference? If you know the answer, the way the question is posed is irrelevant. That's how you study for performance-based questions. And I think that's a great way to approach really the exam in general. Those exam objectives are valuable. They are like gold. So make sure you get your hands on those exam objectives. ProfessorMesser.com/objectives would be the best way to find them, but you can find them directly on the CompTIA website as well. I know we're well past the top of the hour and my voice quickly going south. So I'm going to quickly do one more here from Stephen, who says, does doing a lot of labs help with passing Security Plus? I think anytime you have a chance to do some hands-on and to sort of see the topics in a different way can only help you. And as we've mentioned on our website, there are 4 things that we think are the best elements to passing your exam. We think you should watch a good video training course. I know one of those. You can watch one of those. I think you should get a book. I don't think videos replace a book. I don't think books replace a video. I think they teach you similar information, but in different ways. And we're able to show you things in a video you simply cannot see in a book. Conversely, a book is able to describe things statically on a page in ways that we simply cannot do in a video. Let me explain how that works. For example, let's say that I was going to create a separate Security Plus course, but instead of doing the videos that I have already, which are, what are they, 121 videos and about 15 hours of content, if I simply read a textbook, and I read one of the Security Plus textbooks that are out there on the market, I bet that me reading it, I bet it would be 50 hours, 50. I bet it would be 40 to 60 hours of me reading, because a book is just dense. There's so much information in a book. There's so much you can get across in the printed form that you simply can't do efficiently in a video form. That's why both are important, and they teach you in different ways. I also think you should do as many hands-on labs as possible, because I think they teach it in a way that is more tactile. There's something about the physical typing of things and seeing the reaction on the screen that embeds it into your brain in a way that a video or a book simply cannot. There are a set of videos or labs on our site. If you go to ProfessorMesser.com in our, I was just on there. If you go to ProfessorMesser.com in the security, under Start Security here, You scroll down, all of the CompTIA tools are down here at the bottom, the premium training bundles, and they have a set of labs, CertMaster labs, that are pretty good. They're quite good. I've worked with them myself. I've loaded them up. We should do one of those sometime on the live stream where you're working in a VM. It's an actual operating system with real information. It's not some weird graphic that has you dragging and dropping things that aren't based in reality. That's where you want to go. That's really the important part of it. Those are incredibly useful. This is also a great place if you need a good book. CertMaster has a good book. Their official CertMaster study is what they call the book that they publish. They have books available for Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus. They're available as well. We have their books on here. And their Q&A. You know, if you want Security Plus Q&A, we have our book. CompTIA also makes an online kind of an online click different things on your screen kind of scenario. So those are good too. Those might be things to consider if you're working, trying to find additional things. They also have a tool called CertMaster Learn, which has kind of the information from a book. There are practice exams in CertMaster Learn. There are performance-based questions in CertMaster Learn. So there's even more. They sort of bundle a lot of different things together into one product, and that's CertMaster Learn. So the official CompTIA product's quite good from a training perspective, and you have different choices over the things that you might be able to use. The fourth thing, I mentioned there were four. So get the book, get the video, get the labs, and the last thing would be the Q&A. Don't do the Q&A first. I've had a number of people talk to me about their strategies for an exam. They don't look through videos. They don't read a book. Who wants to do labs? I just go to practice questions and read practice questions. And based on the answers, I try to learn from there. That is a remarkably inefficient way to study. And indeed, you're missing a lot of great content if you're only looking at practice questions to determine what's going on. You're missing the big picture on most of these topics. So that would be another thing to think about, is maybe it would be a better idea to look at a book, watch a video, maybe both of those, do some labs, and then do some practice questions. Now, it may be that you need only 3 of those. Maybe you only need 2 of those, but that's really up to you. You have to make the decision on what tools are going to be the right ones to use for your studies, because you're the one that ultimately needs to take these exams. And you of course know about your background. You know about the things that you don't know. You know about the topics that you have to study to lock into your brain to be ready for this exam. It just depends on your personal study habits. But I think your best bet is to get all 4 of those, go through each one of them, and that's really going to prepare you best for walking into an exam like the Security Plus exam. That's going to be something to consider regardless of when you take the exam. You're going to need to be prepared when you walk in that door. We, of course, have our course. We have other study materials on our site. There's the CompTIA materials. And, of course, all of those bundles on our site from CompTIA are also discounted. That's one of the benefits we have of being a CompTIA partner. So if you're planning to get CertMaster Study or CertMaster Learn or CertMaster Practice or the labs, you were going to buy them on the CompTIA website, you get exactly the same thing at a cheaper price right there on ProfessorMesser.com. So that might be a good thing to consider as well if you're looking into something like that. Well, we're way past the top of the hour, but I think that's probably a pretty comprehensive list of questions you had for me this month. Thank you so much for submitting those questions. We could not do the after show without you. And ultimately, the level of the type of questions and the quality of the questions we get is really important for everyone else as well, because we're all in this together trying to figure out the best way to get through the study process. What materials should we use? What are you using? What types of study processes do you have? And of course, you may want to check out our Discord after this. That's where I'm going to be, and that's where a lot of other folks are already studying for their Security Plus exam. We have tons of resources available for you. If you need assistance with Security Plus, we have people, we have tools, we have processes on our Discord and on our website that can help you as well. Will you do another one of these study groups next month? Of course, we have A Plus in a couple of weeks, Network Plus the week after that, and Security Plus. We'll be updating our calendar right after we're done here. You can, of course, always find that calendar at ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for just being awesome. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.